Whatever, so. Five. Marianne, if you join us, and she's not.
Okay, so.
You're welcome to start, you'll see her, you're on the screen.
Yeah,
They're on screen.
I think we're expecting us, it's right, so?
There. Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yes. It's. Yeah, yeah, okay. Hey, sorry.
I like. That's very Howard. That's seven and. Gotta get, you wanted to get any sort of.
There's none of it.
We do.
Get paid. If they keep track of your credits when you go to those things, I didn't go this year, they're like, and you didn't go, you're still stuck at 7.
You. I mean, what it is.
I girl down.
Thank you. Call the Madison Public Schools Board of Education meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item up is our school and community session and public participation. Is there anybody online? No, okay. Oh, Mary Ann's on now, okay. All right, next is our Board of Education Student Representatives Report from Grace and Kate. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Sorry we're running a little late. We just came from Madison Youth, which started at 6, so we were racing over. But last Friday marked the midpoint of our second trimester, which is also halfway through the school year. So it's definitely going by very fast, especially as a senior. And Vibe is headed to Ohio for nationals this Thursday. They're going to be there all weekend, and we're wishing them the best of luck. And then on Monday and Tuesday marks our February break, so that'll give students a nice time off. And we had a student leadership meeting, which is all the class officers from the 4 grades, and 2 main topics of discussion. The first was cell phones. I know that's probably been a really big talking point here as well, but a survey was sent out to the students and the parents regarding cell phone usage and suggestions about how it can be used and restricted during the school day. So there's a lot of discussion about that going on at the high school. A lot of students concerned or angry or worried, things like that. And then our other conversation was around the introduction of an adaptive PE. It's led by Mrs. Jarvis. It's not formalized yet. She was just trying to gauge some interest, but it's a concept of bringing adaptive PE, which is existent in Polson, into the high school, and it got a lot of support from the students. So I think that could be something very interesting. I don't think it'll even be brought maybe to this board until next year, but it's a really interesting idea, and I was in full support of that.
Yeah, and so kind of as Grace said, it is the midpoint, I think, of the year as well. So course selection is now done. That was due January 30th. So all the students put in their requests for classes, making sure they have all their credits done. So that was all finished up, and now that's just up to our school counseling department to kind of get that all sorted out and figuring out everyone's schedules for next year, which is always a lot of work. The Career Expo was also last Tuesday. It was a huge event, super successful. I know everyone from the junior class, I think it was mandatory for them to go, and seniors were also invited to come as well. But from my point of view, so many people were interacting with different people who were there, just getting to like a feel of all the different careers, getting to learn about different careers. For me, it was just a super eye-opening opportunity to see kind of what I was interested in. And I think a lot of my peers felt that way as well. So I would say it was a super successful event that helped a lot of juniors kind of start thinking about, you know, what they want to do for their future, or even deciding kind of what they want to do. It also led to a lot of opportunities. I know a lot of the people who had tables and who were showing off their careers did like offer them to, like they were saying that we could shadow them, or they would love us to contact them for more information, which is super helpful, and always, you know, an amazing opportunity. The band concert is tomorrow night. I hope that a lot of maybe you guys can go. It's supposed to be really good. And we just hope that a lot of people go and support the band. That is tomorrow night again. And the girls gymnastics team just won SECs, I think it was. So that was a huge win for them. We're super proud of them as well. And we also just had a informational meeting about the Costa Rica spring break trip, which I believe is happening. Oh, is it this spring break? I think it's this year. Maybe next year. I
I
believe
feel like
it's
next year.
it's next
A
year.
little close.
Yeah,
It's coming up pretty quick.
But anyone who's interested in attending that could go to the meeting or still kind of find out more information about that. But that seems like a super exciting event that any student can join in on. So yeah.
Thank you.
I just, can you tell me a little bit more about adaptive PE? Like, is that like unified sports or is it something different? I'd love to hear more.
So at the middle school, I believe it's still a program. I know it was when I was a student, and they had students who seek special education with students from the gym class, and they would pair them together for the gym period. And it worked really well. It was a very inclusive environment. And at Olson, and I know when I was in elementary school at Ryerson, which seems kind of long ago now, that's not existent, but we had a really strong unified sports program, and we had probably over 20 students involved at a time, and we'd go across the state to compete. But I was still really involved in middle school. I think a lot of students were for adaptive soccer and basketball, which were all after school. But the high school doesn't really have a strong unified sports program, and it gets really difficult because after school there's varsity or freshman sports that students are choosing to attend, or there's clubs or different meetings. So I think unified sports really faded out at the high school, even though there's still students who would really benefit from that kind of interaction. So the suggestion was bringing adaptive PE, the concept, to the high school and having students with special education with students from gym class, and have it be a period. It would be one trimester and you'd still receive your gym credit, but it's just a new form of gym.
Cool. Okay, so it would be a class for credit during the school day.
Yeah, we were discussing all types of things. It's in a pretty early stage, but they were also looking at health classes, fulfilling that kind of credit. But the credit is to incentivize students, and the thought is if you have this program during the day, it's not compromising after school involvement, but it's still giving those students some interaction with other peers during the day.
And I'm sorry, how was this raised again?
It was brought by Mrs. Jarvis, who is a gym teacher at Folsom, I believe.
Health coordinator. Okay.
Yeah.
For 12.
She's across, yeah.
So will that come through curriculum?
Yeah.
The other adaptive PE programs are more of a pre-teaching concept in the other grade levels, but I think you've said it very well. Like, it's different at the high school because of the competitive sports that are there. So the same level of commitment is difficult to have.
Right.
And I believe, can I say something?
Marianne has a question.
Mary Ann, go ahead.
Right, and I believe that we're going to have a presentation about how unified sports and the whole unified program is part of us, and how maybe we can do more with our program. I know that they had a prom that was through all the districts, and I don't know if we participated. So we're going to have a program that will, or a session where we'll talk about what we do with unified
Right.
uniform sports and for the whole program.
Yeah, thank you. Any
So
other-
can you turn the volume up?
Oh, mine?
No, on our end. Not on your end, on our end.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm at where I normally am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for our awesome students? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are on to another one now, are you?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have to go back.
Meeting after families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, and now the part we've all been waiting for, the superintendent's report, Dr. Pelton.
Thank you, Chair Baskin. So, as Zoe, sets up the, cell phone survey results, we've kept that as the main thing for, tonight, and she's gonna present the results of the survey, and then we're all hands on deck for, any questions you might have. I have a couple, data points to add as well. Just want to share, as our students shared, all our elementary students are very aware of what today is. It's the 100th day of school. So, that's a big deal in elementary level. So that, has been great, celebration today. And then I know we're far from over with winter, but our one snow day does move the end of school to June 17th. So that the calendar is updated on the website. So anybody watching at home, or if anybody asks board members, we have updated the calendar as we do throughout of any full day losses of school where we have to make that up. So we're at Wednesday, June 17th, which is great. Hopefully it stays there and we start moving towards spring here. I want to say thank you to the community, to our students, to our parents, to our teachers for completing the cell phone survey. We had really good results, really good returns, as you'll see throughout. So we were impressed and happy to share those results with you. So we'll get that started, and then we'll have a good discussion on this.
Bear with me, I'm running a couple of computers all at once while doing this. But as Dr. Cook said, as you all are aware, we released a cell phone survey in the last few weeks, basically to gauge from our community how folks feel about the cell phone survey as it exists at the various grade levels in Madison Public Schools. So how we'll look at it tonight is first we're going to look at it from the K-12 results level, and then we'll take a closer and more in-depth look at the high school, where we also interviewed or surveyed the students and teachers as well as the parents. And as we go through this, please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions at any point in time. No need to hold them till the end. And in addition, so when we released this to parents, as you all are aware, we gave everybody a week to fill it out. We asked people to fill out a survey for each one of their children. And we sent out one reminder midweek for those folks who maybe had seen it and then forgot to fill it out. So when we sent out the survey, we received 1,269 survey responses. So that's tied to an individual child. That may have been a couple of parents filled it out multiple times for multiples of their children. But that's about half. So half of our students are represented there. At the K-5 level, it was about 48%. The middle school did very well at 62%, and the high school was about 55%. All of the building principals also sent out the surveys as well, just to make sure that folks, you couldn't miss it. We asked a couple of general questions to get us started. And 52% of respondents said that their students had a cell phone. Of students with phones, 95% had a smartphone. When you looked at that kind of broken out across the grade levels, the majority of students K-5 do not have a phone. The middle school was mixed, and the high school, essentially every child has a cell phone. For those students who have a smartphone, 63% of parents said they gave it to their students between the ages of 9 and 12. 34% gave it to their student when the child was over the age of 13. And about 3% of parents said they gave this student a smartphone when they were 8 or younger. Some of the questions we asked parents was saying, in a typical school day, how many times do you contact your student by cell phone? And you can see the results there. The majority of parents said 0 times. When we get to the high school student data, you'll see that they had a different take on that particular statistic. And same with question 8, if students had greater phone restrictions, do you feel you could reach your student in a timely manner during the school day when needed? The majority of parents said yes. The majority of students, as you will see later, said no. And 80 of those students who have phones, the majority of parents allow the child to bring the phone to school. The big question we asked was, overall, how satisfied are you with your school's phone policy? Just as a reminder, what the policy is at each level, the high school currently uses what's known as a bell-to-bell policy, which says the student cannot use their phone during class time unless the teacher explicitly says that they could take it out for an academic purpose. They're allowed to access their phone during study hall, passing period, lunch, and before and after school. At Polson, they have a more of an away all day policy, which says that the student can use their phone before school and after school, but during school day, it's to be put in their locker on silent. If the student is found to be using their phone during the day, the phone is confiscated and it gets to spend the day on the front counter of the Polson office. And at the elementary level, no phones, no watches, no earpods, etc. And then again, when we asked, should your school's phone policy be more or less restrictive than it is now? The one outlier that I just found a bit interesting with this data is at the K-5 level, the dark blue says that the policy should be much more restrictive. 40% of parents at the K-5 level said it should be much more restrictive. I'm not quite sure how, since we don't allow students to have phones, watches.
I think they're just underlining it, emphasizing.
I would
Yeah.
think so, but the question was to say for your specific school, but that's neither here nor there.
Reading comprehension.
Looking at the high school, did anyone have any questions on the K-12 data before I proceed?
No, I have one question.
Yes,
So I did see that someone had posted a link to the survey on social media. So I'm wondering, how do we know if the data is true? Like,
So we comb the data, we comb the written in responses, the numbers. It all makes sense, like, you know, we did watch for that as much as we can, like. We, you know, obviously there would have been triggers if 100% of K-5 families filled it out or something like that, but I think the numbers came in about what we expected.
yeah, and
And
one of the fun things about the mass messaging system that we use is when I send out an e-notify, the system will tell me how many people click on a link within the e-notify from on the back end. So I can tell you based on the number of clicks for that actual survey link over the two, about 85% of the responses came from clicking on the link either from me or from the building principals. So it's a way to kind of check. There's always going to be some who are going to pick it up somewhere else, but I did see it posted on social media, but it was posted in Madison had parent groups, so it's just another way to reach them. But that's one of the trade-offs when you make it anonymous, but that's also how you get more people to respond. Looking at the high school, so again, we surveyed parents, guardians, teachers, and students. Kind of a recap of what you've already seen, kind of the big questions. Overall, how satisfied are you with your school's phone policy? So here we in the yellow, we have 26% were neutral, 32% were satisfied, 19 very satisfied, 16 dissatisfied, and 7% very dissatisfied. Should the school's policy be more or less restrictive than it is now? 39% said the policy is just right, 24% said it should be a little more restrictive, 29% said the policy should be much more restrictive. 4% said the policy should be a little less, 1% said a lot less, and 3% said they did not know. Then we asked the teachers. The teachers were given a week to complete the survey as well. It was sent out by Mr. Salutary, and he reminded them at staff meetings to please complete the survey. We asked classroom teachers to complete the survey as they're the ones most directly impacted by the phone policy as it exists now. So 78 high school teachers completed the survey. We asked them a number of similar questions that we asked the parents and a couple more practical application of the policy questions. Yes.
how many teachers do we have? Well,
That's roughly pure classroom teachers, that's about a 85% response rate. So 50% of teachers said they feel we did ask them to kind of snitch on their fellow teachers a little bit in this survey response, so I appreciate them filling it out. 50% said teachers enforce the policy most of the time, and 36% said about half of the time. 44% said they're somewhat satisfied with the current policy, 26% said they're satisfied, and 12% said very satisfied. We asked them what percentage of students they believe are using their phones when they shouldn't be. 40% said less than 10% of kids, and 26% of teachers said that they thought less than 25% of students. We also asked them how often unauthorized cell phone use interrupts your class time, and the majority of teachers said less than 5 times a week. We also we gave the teachers kind of an open response question. So here there's a couple of samples of some of the things they said. We asked them 2 questions. One was, what challenges have you faced with implementing and or enforcing the current phone policy? There was about six, it was an option to respond to that, you didn't have to, there was about 58 to 60 responses on that. And some common themes that came from those responses was that the underclassmen have a much higher compliance rate than the seniors do. Those teachers who teach 9 and 10 or even 11 really have far fewer issues getting kids to comply. Some teachers expressed concern that some courses do rely on students being able to access their phones. So not wanting to see an outright ban if that, because that would impact their classrooms. And then, one big theme was there is a desire to see a more consistent enforcement approach throughout the building. To be clear, at the beginning of the year, the various departments had asked the administration if they could try out different things to see what worked best for their department, and the administration agreed, since the needs of a CTE department where you might need your phone a lot more are going to be very different than, say, the needs of an English department. But after doing this for a couple of months, I think, as we'll see in the next slide, there were a couple of ideas that.
So I could just give an example of what that might look like. So some departments have gone with the full like cell phone caddy that hangs on the wall. So like we have it on the wall here, and teachers actually use it to take attendance in some cases. So Gail is number one, and so if Gail's phone is in slot number one, I know Gail's in class, you know, and just kind of down the line is how they do that. So that, in talking to teachers, very anecdotal information here, that they found to be the best use of any of the
So
different.
you can cut class by just throwing.
Put your phone in there.
But yes, that was a very common and popular approach. I really enjoyed all the different names the teachers had come up for that too. It was anything from phone hotel, phone jail, phone caddy, phone spa in one case. I was like, all right. But they definitely, it seemed to be a very popular option. Then we looked at the students. So what we did is we shared the survey with all students in grades 9 to 11 during advisory. So we tried to make it as controlled of an environment as possible rather than giving it to them for a week. It was basically, you have 25 minutes. You're sitting on your Chromebook in front of your teacher, Mr. Salutary, emailed it out to all of those students at that time, and they completed it within, everyone was done with it 30 minutes. And then I was able to close the survey. So in those grades, we had 456 students respond, which is about 84% of all the students in those grades.
Some of the people who didn't respond presumably might have been absent, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's missing about 30 kids per grade. From the total. So when we asked the question, we said, essentially, every student in the high school, more or less, has a phone, and it is a smartphone. We asked students then, how many hours do you spend on your phone a day in the high school? 65% roughly said they spend less than an hour a day on their phone at school, and 28% said they spend 1 to 2 hours. When you look at the high school, that data seems accurate when you look at the high school schedule and their opportunities to actually access their phone. If you consider it within the school day, there's 6 periods, they have 4 minutes of passing period time that they can access their phone. If you're in grades 9 and 10, your lunch is only 30 minutes, and if you're in grades 11 and 12, your lunch is an hour. And then if you had a study hall, that could add 30 to 60 minutes, depending on which, how your schedule is built. But you figure your typical 9th or 10th grader isn't going to have more free time than is an hour built into the schedule. And then, as you remember, when we asked the parents, how often do you contact your student, the students had a bit of a different response to that. 50%, 56% of students said their parents contact them 1 to 2 times during a single day, and roughly 36% said their parents contact them 3 or more times during a school day, which was the high school parents, when I broke that data out, half of them said they don't contact their student at all. The other half said 1 to 2 times, and only 3% said they contact their students 3 or 4 times.
So was that specified the school day was just during the class time frame, nothing after school?
Correct. So I'll let everyone guess who they think is being honest. Then we asked the students a couple of different questions about being able to access their phone during the day. We also asked students, do you have a job and does your employer contact you? When we asked, about 45% of students said they had a job, and we didn't ask them what kind of job or anything specifics like that. And of that 45%, 47 of those students said their boss contacts them 1 to 2 times a week during the school day via text. We also asked them a couple other questions, such as, please rate your agreement with the statement. I feel worried about missing out on things when I don't have access to my phone. The data, I think, is fairly interesting for that one, and the high school administration, who did have a chance to take a look at this, did point out that the students not being overly worried about missing out may in some ways have something to do with their ability to access their phones at certain points throughout the day. And then we asked them if you feel you'd be able to contact your parents, guardians in a timely manner. When you need to during the school day, if you don't have a cell phone. Roughly 76% of students said no. Versus parents, where it was only 33% of high school parents said no, they didn't feel they could reach their child in a timely manner. Some of that, again, may be the function of the schedule. It is a very tight passing period at the high school. If you needed to go if you went from far corner of the third floor to all the way down to the front office to give Miss Minity a note to then call. If they're thinking of it that way, I don't know how technically they thought of it when they were answering this question. That could be a component of that.
Good question.
Yes,
Are students allowed to email their parents from their Chromebooks?
not
No,
outside.
Can't go outside the
Okay.
Google,
The- okay.
wall, yeah.
The guardian wall or whatever, the firewall,
Yeah,
whatever
firewall.
they call it. So no,
Unless their parents a board of ed member.
Yes.
That's true.
We asked them a couple of questions specifically about the policy. Students said 85% of students said they believe they and their peers follow the phone policy most, if not all of the time. We asked them again, how satisfied are you with your current phone policy? Not particularly surprising results. 34% very satisfied, 41% satisfied, 17% somewhat satisfied. And then when we asked them, in your opinion, should your school's phone policy be more or less restrictive than it is now? About 54% said it's just right. 28% said it should be a little less restrictive. Only 22 students said a little more restrictive. Only 3 said much more, and 17 said they did not know.
I asked the caddies / spas, whatever, the phone hotels, are they required now at the high school?
No.
So only some classes have that. I understand there's some classes like career tech ed where they need them for
Yeah.
scientific calculators or
Yeah.
whatever, but non-career tech ed, do all of those classrooms have them?
They went by department because we really had, that's what the teachers asked for. They asked to be able to look at things through departments. So I think, Mr. Salvatore worked with teachers and they did, I would say I see them in most classes I go into that they have it. I think it's just the consistent use of them could be something we look at, going forward.
Did any teachers or students feel that by having to put their phones in a caddy on the wall or whatever, and then retrieve it at the end of the period, that it in any way, like, made them late for the next class, or like, was there any sort of,
No,
negative?
As we get to, you'll actually see students, we also gave them the opportunity to an open response question. And some of them said they liked just being able to see it, to know it was there, but they weren't touching it.
It also removes a consistent, strong use of that, removes the issue of a student going to ask to go to the bathroom to then use their phone. So the phone stays in the caddy.
Are they turned off?
Turned off or silenced in the caddy, yeah.
We asked them a couple questions about outside of school. About 52% of students said they spend 3 to 4 hours on their phone outside of school on a given day. And we asked them, do you sleep with your phone in your room? 74% of students said yes. And then we gave them a very general question. Is there anything else you would like to tell us? Now, remember, there was 465 students who took this survey. 356 of them had something to say in the open question. So some of them was just very polite, no, thank you, which was, lovely. But this is just a sample of some of the things that students wrote in and said. This isn't a generalization. No comment written in by any of those students of the 356 supported a stronger ban. Some common themes among the students was that there was a strong opposition to the concept of yonder pouches. There was support for the current policy because they felt it teaches them self-regulation. And there was some just communication access concerns that they had. There were also a significant number of students who wrote in to justify their response to having their phone in their room when they slept, as you see with the one about rain sounds. Use of it as an alarm. One student took the time to clarify that the phone was in the room, but he didn't sleep with the phone in the bed or anything like that. I was like, thank you for sharing.
You're not.
But all in all, there were some very lengthy, detailed, thoughtful responses from the students.
Can I ask you a question? So
Yes,
how many, or did you, count? Were there, the one at the bottom on the second one about how they don't feel safe? Was there more than one, comment about safety?
yes.
A bunch?
I
Like double
wouldn't-
digits or?
I didn't count. There were enough where I noticed it.
Okay,
And I tried to pick samples here that showed a common theme of
Yeah.
other responses that were there.
thank you.
So the parents did not have an opportunity to comment free form.
They did.
In the interest of being able to turn around the data to you in a timely manner, that would have been
Yeah.
quite a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Marianne, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Do you have any questions at this point? In that case, then I will turn it over to Dr. Cook to talk about next steps.
So yeah, before we talk about next steps, I just want to update the board. Since our last discussion on this, obviously the legislature's open for the season and kicked off with Governor Lamont with his budget and in his state of the state and a presentation. And I just want to share with you where this currently stands. Last year, there was a bill proposed that moved out of committee but didn't pass for like a statewide cell phone ban. It's getting a lot more attention this year early on. And the current proposed bill reads, it just got this over the weekend. No student in a public school in the state would be allowed to access their personal cell phone, tablet, computer, gaming device, or smartwatch on school property during the school day unless authorized for instructional purposes. So that's the current proposal at the legislative level. It seems to be getting, a lot of attention this year. There's been, several newspaper articles written about it. I just wanted to share where that currently is. And then I also want to share a few Madison specific things. So a couple of things that our students use the phones for during the day. So there are certain programs they need two-factor authentication. So that is something they use that for. There is workarounds. We know other districts use that as well, but like for the UConn program, to access the UConn library, they need that two-factor. As Zoe mentioned, our film production course uses cell phones. So I mean, I think you've seen maybe even some of the new commercials are shot with completely with an iPhone, and that you see on TV, and they're high quality. So what they use is even higher quality than some of the equipment that we have available to them. So we use that, and then photography classes as well. We do have students that use the phone for translation. So multi-language learners that come into the district will use that for translation early on in their careers here. And then, we're now starting to deal with, it hasn't been as much issue, but I had a colleague share with me that students are showing up with meta classes in their district, and they can make those prescription now. So the student has prescription glasses and then has basically a smartphone available to them in their vision. So there is those pieces as well as 504 special ed concerns that come up. So I just want to share all that data with you, answer any questions, and we're open to discussing what next steps might be for the board.
I would just point out real quick that the State Department of Ed came out with a model policy, and that was more permissive than what the state is currently considering at the legislature. It offered local districts the freedom and flexibility, to come up with their own, but it had recommended policy. And then, locals could adjust it to their need.
Correct. Our current policy is very similar to one of the examples they gave. You know, of really a full out ban, you know, K-8, and then an openness, some openness at the high school.
So this says last January session. Is there a proposed bill for this session?
Yes.
There is.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
it worded the same, being that restrictive? Because this doesn't give you leeway for those students that need it for medical reasons or like for a particular class. It's just like a complete ban.
Yeah, so that was what I read. I'm sorry, I got it over the weekend. It was after, you know, this presentation was put together, but it was for instructional purposes. So you could have,
Special.
a 504 scenario where a student is carrying a phone or, an
So there
ML.
is a little bit of,
Yeah,
Or for
someone, you can't really,
yes,
you know, if someone's using it for a glucose, you can't
Right.
tell them they can't have it.
yeah,
Yes,
That's absurd.
for translation. or
right,
something.
yeah. No, absolutely.
Seems like it would be a bit, if you want to have students have them available for academic use for certain limited specific uses. Seems like it would be hard to enforce not allowing any phones throughout the day. You see it, it's gone, when that student is going to the next class, which they need it for. Just as a practical matter, but. Well, let's open up any questions or thoughts, discussion. We're not voting on this in any way tonight. But we can open it up to discussion, Emily and then Diane.
I am, thank you for this, so, and for getting that, I think that's a great response. I was surprised, in a good way to see that more than half of the high school parents think it should be more restrictive. I think we'd sort of been thinking, we know the parents of younger kids are supportive of more restrictive policies, but we weren't so sure about high school parents. So I think that's interesting, that they think it should be more restrictive. I also thought it was interesting about they don't know how to contact their parents because they've really never had to, right? I mean, they don't know how to contact their parents because they haven't. But I think that the results are really interesting. Those are my two like jump out points right now. And also sorry that teachers did request or would prefer a more consistent approach to implementation. I think, you know, the proposed bill would do that, or a stronger policy across the whole district, because it seems sort of otherwise difficult for teachers to take time out of their day to have a different policy, or by department, you know.
So I feel like, you know, I knew that there was a bill coming through or was going to come through that was going to be more restrictive. I think everyone's been reading about it. Other states have done it, other districts have done it. I am curious about what the teachers are thinking regarding this, because, you know, for those that have the policy where you know, put it in the cell phone jail or basket or whatever, you know, the kids are picking it up and they're like, I had no idea they were using it for attendance. I find that amusing, but if it becomes a restricted thing where it's like all day long, I think it's going to be particularly difficult for the seniors. And I think, you know, their responses to the survey definitely show that. But the other thing is, and unless you've had a child recently go through their senior year, like they are waiting on their college decisions. They are checking, there's the, you know, the site that you got to check for it. They have a release day and time. Every college has like a different day and time that they are releasing their decisions. And these kids are, you know, they're high achievers and they are glued to their phone because they want to know if they were accepted, early decision, early action. There's so many different deadlines, you know, and then there's, you know, checking on the ECE, you know, credits and things like that. And, you know, senior year is such a busy year for college applications, checking to make sure you've met the deadlines. And I know that they do it like all day long because there's so many different deadlines, you know, except for like the Common App. But I think it would really impact them in a negative way in that sense. So there would need to be a workaround for that, for a way for the students to be able to check their deadlines and stuff like that, just otherwise, I think the anxiety and stress levels for those students are gonna be like unbelievable.
Theoretically, they could do that on a computer or like with their guidance counselor. I imagine, right?
Well,
And also it's, we're talking about a subgroup of kids for a period of like 2 months, maybe. Ish, 3 months, I mean,
well, their early action and early
Yeah.
decision deadlines are all different for different colleges, so it depends on where you apply. And I would say that trying to do that through your guidance counselor, I don't think that would happen at all. I mean, they're busy all day long. They've got appointments that, so like if even if you wanted to go in and talk to them, like you gotta make an appointment and they're not necessarily available right away. So I would say no to that. Just based on my experience recently.
Mhm.
But I feel like there would need to be a way for them to be able to check somehow
Mhm.
during the day. And I know it doesn't seem like, oh, it should be that important, but when you're that senior and you're waiting on that, it's like life and death to them, you know, and I think it's just, you know, they're distracted until they find out they are distracted.
mhm.
So I just think it's another component to think about and to be mindful of.
But don't you think, honestly, Diane, don't you think they can wait till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to find out? I mean,
No.
do they have to be, yeah, but they're gonna be distracted by so many different things. I mean, just to make that a point of having a phone during the day doesn't seem like a big thing. We all have to wait to find out when we have to do things.
Yeah, but this is a generation that like didn't wait for the Harry Potter books.
Understand, so
Wait,
maybe it's
everything is
not,
like,
maybe
and
it's
I'm just saying,
for
I'm
them
not
to
saying that they
wait.
shouldn't have to wait, but
Yeah,
I'm saying that their ability to wait is much less than I think our generations are used to.
but is that a reason for them
And-
to have a phone and waiting all day, every day to hear this? When maybe they'll have to wait till after school and do their stuff during the day and wait till after school to find out what's happening for the rest of their time. I don't know if that's a real good reason to have a phone.
I'm not saying it's a good reason to have a phone, I'm saying it's something to consider and to be mindful of, because
Yeah.
the amount of stress our seniors are under,
I know
I
that.
think until you have lived through it like recently.
I've
am I
lived through it.
wrong?
I lived through it for 8 years when I worked as a school nurse. The kids came in every day wondering what school they were gonna get admitted to, and they were so upset when they didn't, when they did hear. But if they have to wait all day while they're at school when they're supposed to be enjoying and having a different experience, I don't know if that's a good reason to have a phone.
So remember, we didn't ask the seniors because we knew they wouldn't have it be impacted by this. So we did not ask the current seniors. But when we spoke to student leadership, that was the most common thing they said, as a reason why they wanted to have access to their phones, is that they felt like they needed to have kind of that, connection to things that the Chromebook does not allow them to get to. So there are applications and things like that. Yes. But I also don't want to make this sound like it's not something we can't work around, because there's plenty of districts that have the restrictions in place right now that are able to make it work. You know, Wilton and Brantford I spoke to recently. I know, you know, Westport has it. Darien has 12th graders can have their phone, but 9 through 11, I don't even know how you deal with that, because you'd have different policies within the same class. You know, like the same class period. You know, you, as a teacher, then you're dealing with. I think with our teachers, and we talk to them quite a bit. I think they feel like a band takes everything off their plate, but it doesn't. They're still going to be very much involved in this, and that's what I've shared with them personally when I'm talking to them, because you know, they still have a hand in the enforcement of it. Like, it's not just the administration that's gonna have to enforce it. So that's, I think, the piece that some of the teachers didn't understand, like that piece. You know, with a band.
Because this sort of alludes to the fact that you'd have to like lock it in a locker, right? Or
Yeah, so I think my take on what the board would like the implementation, if the governor's proposal, if the proposal in front of the legislators right now goes through, is that we would use lockers versus yonder pouches. Yonder pouches would be the other option, but I think that we are in a place where it's not a major issue at this point for us. Like, I think we want to do what's best for kids. I understand that, but like, this is not like a major issue for us on a day-to-day basis, you know, at the high school. So I think the move to the lockers would be the right move, or leave it in your car or something like that versus yonder pouches. I think that would be, well,
I just have a couple thoughts I wanted to share. I think one is that I was heartened to hear that, you know, it sounds like that, you know, maybe 10% of students are using their phones problematically. I do wonder though if those 10% using them problematically are maybe students who are higher risk at baseline. And so I think that you know, I know there's not an opportunity to ask a follow-up question, but that's something I'm a little bit curious about. I also think it's worth thinking about this in both the short term and the long term. So I have no doubt that if we institute a ban, it's going to be painful in the short term, right? I mean, it's going to be hard for these existing high schoolers. It's going to be hard on teachers, especially in that first year. But I also think it's worth thinking about the long game here, right? So that, you know, when our current elementary students get to high school, they'll have never known a world
Right.
where cell phones are in the school, right?
Yeah.
There's no loss. They'll have figured out how they can contact their parents if they need to. So I get that there's this short-term pain. And I really do get that. And I'm empathetic for that. But I also think we need to play the long game here.
And to that too, I would say it's, like we talked about this last time, I think. The ninth graders came from Polson where lockers were the policy. Everyone up to the current eighth graders, phones and lockers. So we're talking about, you know, next year, two classes,
Yeah.
you know, the current sophomores and juniors, really mostly the juniors who will be seniors next year being annoyed. I'm the parent of one of those kids, so I'll feel. But thank you. But I think the sophomores too, when they were at Polson, it was lockers also. So I agree wholeheartedly, Jessica.
So, I've been very vocal about my position on this in the past. My position was informed by the desire, to embrace technology and use the relatively great position we are in, to be able to take a different path and give our kids an advantage by preparing them for what they're going to experience after high school, either in college or in the work world, where there's a strong reliance on technology, including and especially smartphones, to be able to communicate with coworkers, access information, and just, you know, be on top of your game at work or in college. On the other hand, I've been evolving in my position because, you know, at least now the state of social science undeniably, you know, and inescapably points to the fact that there are currently problems, especially with social media and the way that social media is designed to work, that causes problems with mobile phone usage. You know, I'm no stranger to science, and I'm a science promoter. And so you know, on the one hand, you know, I'm sensitive to that and I understand it. And, you know, I want to get to the point where we're aligned with science. And I think the way I get there is, I also take a short-term and long-term approach, but I think my short-term is more like your medium-term and then even longer term. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've been on this board a long time, and even a long time before I was on this board, there's something called the great pendulum of education. And whenever something new comes around and it's scientifically backed, the pendulum swings all the way out one way to meet it. And then over time, it swings the absolute opposite way. And then somewhere, at some point, it settles out somewhere in the middle. And as science advances and also as government is more successful at getting its arms around AI, technology, social media, and there's a promising lawsuit right now in New Mexico that's taking on social media as a product liability matter by the state itself, the attorney general. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think over time, because of the unavoidability and inescapability of the tool value of this little handheld device, it'll be reincorporated into education. The big pendulum of education will swing back to the middle. And I think that will also be not only because government and lawsuits get their arms around, to also be because the science is relatively new right now because social media is relatively new. It'll probably take another generation before the science on social media and the rules and regulations around social media get to a place where it'll start to turn the corner on the science of the social science regarding social media and phone use. So, I think my feeling is, at this point, it's better to err on the side of following science now, but be open-minded as a board, and it may not be this board, we're just present custodians and stewards of these seats. But maybe 5, 7, 10 years down the road, I would strongly encourage whatever board is impaneled here to keep their mind open to the changing science if it changes. And so I don't want to be and I don't want to be accused of having a position that's anti-science, even though I do also see real valuable the real value in giving our kids some advantages going into the next stage of life by teaching them some of this stuff. I also see the other end of it, and in weighing balancing those things, I would like to, I think, evolve to the point of sticking with science.
Just to add to that, I would say as a parent of a current college student, I am shocked and dismayed a bit at how much these colleges and universities have their students using their cell phones to take tests, to have it in the classroom where they actually must use it. They have their computer and they have their cell phone and they're required to use both. And that being said, I know we're not at that level, we're K to 12, but I do see like, as we become more restrictive, and I do read the science, trust me, I do. And I totally agree with the bad effects of the social media, completely agree with that. I can see how there's gonna be this gap where if you keep them K to 12 completely off their phones during school, where they're, not allowed to do anything with it, then they're gonna graduate and go to college and it's gonna be like 100% on the phone. And I know we don't have control over that, but I just think that we should be mindful of it because, again, I know that it is difficult to, everybody knows you're addicted to your phone. And especially children, right? And especially under the age of 26 before their brains are fully developed. So we know this to be true. We know that is science. And yet we're going to be sending them to these institutions. They're still in that time frame and they're going to be just deluged with the amount of time they're going to have to use their phone for their academics, whether they're doing online courses and having to use it in addition for exams in the classroom. And I think it's going to be a very difficult switch from nothing to all. And it's just something to think about, whatever happens here, if that actually happens, obviously we are not going to have a choice. And I don't disagree with that, but I do think that we should be mindful what happens after. And I'm hoping, that parents are listening and staying on top of this because what happens at home is extremely important to how they develop their habits with this.
Can I just say, just to add one point to what I said, because I don't want to make it seem like I want to rush and push the administration in any way. I do feel that we need to give the building administrators and, especially the high school, a fair opportunity to be able to prepare for this. And I also think it would be helpful for the senior cohort to move on, so that, there's less of a blowback, and more of a cultural acceptance and a smoother transition. So I would recommend strongly that we not enact any changes until the fall, at least. And I sense that if this bill passes, it's probably gonna be effective this coming fall anyway. But I'm sorry, Maureen?
That's okay. I was just gonna add to your point that my daughter is a recent college graduate and she had also gone to Han, and that was one of her concerns. She said, how are these kids gonna be ready for college? Because we used it all the time in all of her classes. That was kind of her thought, that it was helpful that when she was at Daniel Han, they were allowed to use it for some classes. So it prepared her better for college.
It is shocking how much
Yes.
colleges use it and have the students rely on it. To the point where I think it's actually stressful for the students because, they have their phone with them all day long, they're on campus all day long. And then they have to make sure it's fully charged for their exam that night at like 8 o'clock at night. Weird timing for exams, but it's like another component to it. Or if there's something wrong with your phone, they like freak out.
And they Zoom on the
No.
new products now.
I just want to say something.
Mary Ann, go ahead.
So I understand what you guys are saying, and that's totally, totally correct. But we're talking about little kids here. We're talking about the kids in our charge right now. And I can't think that they don't know how to use their phones. I think they know how to use their phones way better than I know how to use my phones, even third and fourth and fifth grade or second grade. We are not worried about that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how we're going to do it now, how we're going to help our kids now to be more socially engaged, more with the program and less on all this. They don't need it now. They know how to use it. Believe me, they do. I just don't think that we have to worry about when they get out of school and they're in college. I think they're going to be fine with all that. So I think we need to focus in on what we need to do for our kindergarten to 12th graders right now. That's all.
I think, Mary Ann, just to respond to that, theoretically, I think that the issue and the concern is that we would be at a disadvantage as a high school trying to teach our students the ethical and proper and appropriate use of mobile phones and not necessarily the physical, although we do have a track record of improving our SBAC scores when we actually taught the students how it would be tested on computers. And, they responded well, and we did tremendously better the very next year when we started implementing that. So there's legitimate concern for that as well. But again, that doesn't necessarily overcome the social science.
I just really quick, it's not like Danielton High School is gonna be the only school in America that bans cell phones though. So like all of these cohorts going to college, as more states and school districts across the country have away for the day policies, all those kids are going to have to make that transition to college with cell phones. And I also think we are probably gonna see different policies at the higher education level as more of the science comes out, and there already has been some of that. So I totally get what you're saying. If it was just us doing something crazy, that would put our kids at risk, but we are like not, we're not doing anything crazy. We're like right there in the middle of the pack, right towards the back of the pack in this regard. So just that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanna echo, I think Emily's right, I think trends in higher ed will change, and that's certainly what I'm hearing from, I have a lot of connections in higher ed, I agree. I think the other thing I would just highlight is that, I actually think there's a tremendous opportunity to gain skills with a cell phone ban. I think the skill of walking into a cafeteria and having to sit down and make conversation with somebody and not rely on your phone, or walk through the hall and have to make eye contact with people instead of staring down at your phone is a tremendous skill. And I think as AI becomes more common, it's these soft skills that are really gonna matter. So I think a cell phone ban actually
really helps us with that. And I'm less worried about a kid being able to pick up a phone and figure out how to use it in a class. You know, my 10-year-old can do that with great ease. I'm more worried about, you know, kids being able to make conversation in a meaningful way.
I have a sort of a technical question. So knowing that this legislative session is in session and that I'm thinking that we're probably gonna see something, I don't know if it will actually leave committee and, you know, become a bill and actually be voted on this session. I think it's, personally, I think it's highly likely. But that's just a personal opinion based on absolutely nothing. So, but my question then would be to Dr. Cook. Should we, and I know we're not voting on this, but I think we all kind of know with a straw poll where it would land if we did. So should we be ahead of the game? Because you know how sometimes that something comes from Hartford and they're like, this has to be implemented in 2 months. And then we're like, oh geez, you know, and so then we gotta get policy in it. Would it be better to, you know, actually have an agenda item and have it not yet instituted as a policy, but that it's coming, have a policy in the formative stages so that when it comes through, if it comes through, it's not gonna be like a huge surprise to the administration. It's not gonna be, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do we prepare for this? I think we need to plan.
Yeah, I would see, you know, fortunately, it's what, February. And we have some time, because what you're talking about for implementation, I appreciate that that's been shared for next year. It doesn't take us a lot of time to ramp up. Like, you're not saying, you know, buy yonder pouches or go to, you know, do some change to the building or something like that, that we'd have to need time to implement. So I do think we have a little bit of time on this.
I think it's more of a communication.
Right, and I think there is a piece we haven't talked about that I think you need to be aware of too, and it's been mentioned closely, but not like directly on this. We have one of the lowest disciplinary issues for a district when you look at state data, in the state, you know, so very low discipline between, you know, for students in our district, which is phenomenal. We work very hard on relationship building. We work very hard on you know, restorative practices and things like that in the district. And that's been the case for a while in Madison. It's not like this is anything new. This does set our students up, as Jessica mentioned, because they have been used to having the cell phones in school for a more of a disciplinary issues than we've had, you know, recently. And so I think that then becomes something else we're dealing with. I need to make that clear that that'll be something we would be dealing with next year with a ban. You know, especially if it's unique to not unique in that, you know, New York State has already banned it, and lots of states have banned it completely, and you know, the districts right near us. But if it's a choice we're making, I think that's even harder, you know, for students and the messages at home won't be maybe as strong if it's a state ban. So I think that's something to consider. I think it's also important for you to hear from the high school administration. Hopefully they're not watching online. I think if they are, they just gasped. And but I think that there's, you know, a piece of that you should hear from them, like what, you know, they see on a daily basis. Because we did have a school visit the other day, and so administration from all over the district was in Daniel Hand, and you know, elementary principals, elementary assistant principals, athletic director, you know, we're all saying, so, you know, no cell phones basically, you know, throughout that time, except for lunch and in the bridge. And so that's, I think, is important pieces. You know, we do want to point that out, because I think, you know, that's a concern of mine, as well as what we see in the data outside of school. You know, in some ways, this is trying to address childhood obesity through what we serve for the 5 meals a week in the cafeteria. You know, we are just nipping at the issue. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, as a community, as a society, in terms of the amount of time students are on phones outside of school, because I think that's underreported. You know, and so I think that's a concern. And then I think as well, and you know, the governor can't legislate this, so I get that's why it's not part of his just talking points, but we got to get the phones out of the kids' bedrooms. Like we got to buy alarm clocks for every kid or something to do that, because you know, that I think, you know, disrupts sleep patterns and, you know, it's constantly there even if they're not accessing it. So, you know, I think that there's some work we need to do with the community, with Madison Youth Unplugged, with other agencies in town, Madison, Youth Family Services, to get that information out to the parents. And it's much easier, you know, to start because I have 3 girls. When my oldest got to keep it in her room and went off to college, and my middle pulled it back. That was not easy. My youngest, she never had it in her room, so that's it's easier going through when you know right from the beginning. So so that's my suggestion is, you know, we have some time, we bring the high school administration, we track the bill closely and continue the discussion, you know, how the board wants to would be, you know, my next steps. Because it is something we'd like to know sooner rather than later, but it is something you can tell us in June. The board could take action on this in June and we can implement for September. And then the other piece too, before I forget, I could see, because I want to make you aware of it, watching legislation over the years, I could see something slightly different than what's proposed. You know, could they come out and say, you know, except for lunch periods, like ban completely, but except for lunch periods. I'm not saying that's what I'm hoping for, but like I just think we want to track, you know, exactly how that comes out.
That's what I would want it there.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Because, you know, sometimes I see students using phones in a discussion, and then other times you do see students on, you know, their phones, you know.
I mean, I think what we could do is take a vote as a board on asking the administration through the superintendent, directing the superintendent, to start coming up with a plan. To do a bell ban. You know, keep
Just
it-
put it all on him and then I'll write the policy after.
Well, and we can actually, you know, start it through the policy committee process as well. And maybe even the curriculum, you know, because there may be some classes where we need to allow phone use, like career tech ed for the, you know, scientific notation calculator, scientific calculators and that sort of thing, level finders, you know. So this was a discussion. I am interested in hearing real quick from Lisa and Galen, because those are 2 voices we haven't heard in this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Seth.
Yeah.
I agree completely with you, Jessica and Mary Ann, about the social aspect of it. And communication without looking at phones and sharing apps and whatever instas and snaps and everything else. I think that's a huge part of it. And I tend to think that if we did put the ban, if we did agree to the ban or everybody, I think the kids will be just fine because they've got a whole summer to go before they get to college. And I think they're very resilient and they'll figure it out. 3 o'clock to me, and I know some kids are gonna lose their minds, you know, waiting to hear from their college. But maybe 3 o'clock is a fun hour for the seniors. I'll look at their phones, I don't know.
2:00 this school.
Oh, 2 o'clock, okay, there you
An
go,
extra hour,
there you go,
even sooner.
yeah.
They find out 3 hours before the kids in California find out.
Right. So I just think they have a whole summer in between to, you know, rev up their phones again and get their mind into college, and I think a ban is a good thing. I do.
Galen and then Diane.
I think the administration did a great job of pulling data in the presentation, so I really appreciate that. I think that we're in the pole position for it. I like where we're at with our policies. I think we can adapt very easily whichever way it goes. That's all I have to say on that.
Yes, thank you, Zoe, for putting together that awesome presentation. And thank
So,
you, Craig.
I do wanna say one thing about the, I wanna use the word punishment. The piece where, you know, if, thank you, disciplinary, is that something that we would need to like have the discipline for just the cell phone policy within the cell phone policy, or do you add it to like the other disciplinary policy? Because I feel like, you know, especially in the transition period for the high school, you know, that a bit of leniency in the beginning, you know, would be necessary.
Conduct code.
Yeah, because it's a new thing. I granted it would be a new year, whatever, but that's just something I'm thinking of as policy, like, would you put the, you know, your disciplinary actions for that particular policy in that policy?
I would see it as both. I've seen a lot of districts come out with their policy actually included in there, so it's very specific. And then, you
And
know,
allude to it in the
yeah, I
other.
think ultimately, you know, we're very reasonable in how we implement anything that I would imagine, you know, there would need to be some leniency as we start the year off and you know, get to that good place of that. So I think I would see in both. We'd update the code of conduct and we'd have it within the policy, and you know, I'd want to work with the administration on recommendations on what that actually would be. I'm sure all cases would start with a warning, just like,
Right.
you know, hats in school, you know, like, I mean, I think we don't you know, immediately send a kid to the office if they're wearing a hat.
And the other
Oh, sorry,
The
I had
other-
that, Caitlin.
point that I wanted to make is that. And I know it is very specific to like a specific university, but I know that other universities do it the same way, that during that senior year. And it's bizarre and I don't understand it, but just as an example, I know that at the University of Florida, as an incoming freshman. During the month of like April or May is when they start saying like you get to pick your dorm. And they assign you a day and a time that is pretty much always during school hours. That you have to be able to log into during that 10-minute window and pick your room. And it is like certain universities, and UF is one of them, where there is not nearly enough dormitory rooms for the incoming freshmen, let alone other undergraduates.
Yeah.
So if you're not on the ball at that time to do it, you're gonna lose out and you're gonna end up living as a freshman off campus with like some randos in an apartment. So that's just an example, and I know they're not exclusively the only university that does that. And there's all sorts of like weird specific things that I'm sure the guidance counselors could tell you. But that like you wouldn't even know until you actually were admitted to that one university of these bizarre little window timeframes that are ridiculous, but yet they do it. And so we would have to be very, I think, lenient with certain things, with letting them be able to access.
Yeah, I would say we're doing that now, you know, I mean, if that student had a math test at that time, I think we would work. You know, around that situation with the student to select their housing, because that's gonna have a longer impact than waiting an hour to take the math test. So I would imagine they'd go down to school counseling and utilize a space for that item.
Oh, of course, I forgot a couple of things. So I have a comment and a question. And the comment is, should we look at reducing cell phone usage in the context of less screen time overall, right? And then secondly, the question is, do students access AI mostly via their phone or the Chromebook? Chromebook, thank you.
I think, though, what I do see some AI accessing from the phone as well, like, you know, different. So we have a pretty restricted, you know, AI playground for them to be in, you know, so it's pretty specific, but I do know, like the lead consultant that we work with on AI, as Matt Mervis had said, he doesn't see screen time in the future. He sees like people walking around like this, you know, doing work, or the glasses, you know, like that type of thing. You know, that was his
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
All right, I just wanted to make a quick comment about timeline, and Seth, I totally agree with you about not implementing this until the fall. I think we need this graduating class to move on. But I do think we've raised expectations for parents now that we've done the survey, and people will want some information. So, you know, I don't know that we need
You're
to.
watching the meeting.
Well, it's exactly must-see TV for most citizens. I know that everybody can watch this, but you know, I think we probably don't want to sit on this too long.
That's why I think we should have some kind of a vote as a board that kind of sets it in motion. Without saying phones are banned right now, but you know, kind of directing the superintendent to come up with a plan. I think would be a good way for our.
So an action
community to-
item
chew
for
on
the
that.
next
Yeah,
meeting.
So I would say, again, I think you want to hear from the high school administration first.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't need an
look at
action
that.
item for us to vote,
Yeah.
I mean, like you were saying, an action item to direct? Or can you?
well,
give
it would be a
direct?
vote to direct the superintendent to come up with a plan.
But do we need a vote for that?
No,
Right?
We don't need one.
we're following all the other districts. I mean, we're following the process and things like that. Yeah. It's kind of, I can read a room.
Yeah, on the one hand, on the other hand, you know, is the board kind of, what's the word? Are we, you know, like
Protecting.
down, no, are we like avoiding our, you know, our duty to kind of to vote on this? You know, I know the community's been charged one way or another on it, and you know, I kind of feel like it's a bit of a cop out to not vote in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we wanna have the administration weigh in first.
Yes, exactly.
But then you're saying then we should have an action item of voting on this or not, regardless of the state action?
Yes, because I think it, especially if we achieve unanimity, or if it looks like we're getting close to that.
I
I
think you already
think
got
this is a
yours.
strong position for the district to be, you know, like supported. You know, that this was a board decision too, and it's not just the district imposing this on students,
Makes sense.
so.
But it's not a binding action, you know, so that's my response. I feel like that's some
Could
kind
we
of
like a statement of
indication,
support
right?
that we want to, this is
Explore.
our goal and our hope for our plan for next year.
We could do that.
And that we have more information to gather, but that our intention as a board is to facilitate an away for the day policy next school year. Like a statement of, or something along those lines.
And then to answer your question, we will put this up on the website tomorrow. Like, and so I think it's always important. Anytime we survey parents, we respond and let them know we've heard, share the
Yeah.
results, because we don't do it a lot, and you know, purposely, because you know, I think there's only certain times where it makes sense, this being one. So we could do that, and you know, I think that's a piece I just again would caution. I think it's a good idea to hear from the administration first, and then you know, kind of have that discussion again, you know, what's the next steps. But you know, next time we send out a community update, we'll thank people, maybe, you know, we can do it this week, and then let them know that the results are up there so they can see that.
I think I did read that the Connecticut Teachers Association is supporting.
Both
teachers.
Unions have taken a position in favor of a full ban.
I just think once that goes up on the website, we need to be prepared for people to start asking questions about what we're going to do with it.
And that's why I wanna think for a little bit to see like what form it'll take. That sounds like a one potential avenue. Some kind of vote for the board that doesn't necessarily bind the hands of the superintendent, but
We're looking at
authorize
a
it.
more restrictive. cell
Yeah,
phone
something like that. And then, you
Well,
know,
yeah.
the goal is to just get, it looks like we're probably gonna have a pretty square vote, so.
But I would say with the turnaround, I mean, I know you, normally we'd get this to you by Friday, you only got it on Monday because we were working through that. I wouldn't say this is like, you know, a conclusive, like this is the direction the community wants us to go. I think that this is kind of like more in the
It's like
middle.
slightly more.
Right,
Yeah, so I think that that's a piece that, you know, I think we have to listen to and
This
give
is about
board
where the
some
board
chance
is
to-
too, slightly more than half.
yeah.
Gives the board a chance to kind of
Yeah.
really dive into the
Can we
results.
can we just send
Very-
something out that said, we've received all your responses and give the survey out and then say we're working on it and we'll get back to you, like
Yeah.
within a short amount of time?
Phone sessions.
Yes. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll do that in our Friday update.
Yeah,
all right, thank you. Thank you all, that was a very good discussion and what?
Lengthy.
Yeah, lengthy, but this is a very important issue, it's so topical. So, this is the kind of stuff, you know, people expect for us to talk about, so. All right, moving on, any board member comments? Going once, going twice, none, okay. Audience response to information presented, is there any audience online? No. Consent agenda, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Emily.
Second.
Second by Diane, thank you both. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, now the board committee and liaison updates. Which is item number 9 on the agenda, beginning with curriculum and student development. Kathy is not here, but curriculum and student development did not meet before this meeting. So I'm fairly safe to assume there will not be a report. Facilities committee, Emily.
No report, we have none of that since our last meeting.
Okay. Personnel committee, Maureen.
We have not had, no update.
Okay,
You skipped finance.
did I? Oh, I checked it before. Finance committee, thank you.
Maybe nothing to say, thank you.
Thank you. And I think I'll skip policy for now. No,
I got
Um,
lots to say.
I am.
Inform you.
Policy met tonight, and although we had a short agenda, we also had a lengthy discussion. There'll be some policies coming forward, to the board to, that we're asking to waive the second read, and then we have one that has lots of discussions. So first I'll, say there's policy 3240, non-resident admission and tuition fees, 5060.1.2 non-residents, 5120.4.25 procedures for reporting child sexual abuse and sexual assault. And then the main one that's coming through that is not quite fully developed. It's written by Shipman and Goodwin. It's to comply with the state public act and state statutes. And so section 321 of Public Act 25-168 requires boards of ed to adopt 3 policies related to school libraries. 1, a library collection development and maintenance policy. 2, a library display and program policy. And 3, a library material review and reconsideration policy governing school library materials, displays, and programming. These policies must be created in consultation with the superintendent of schools, the director of curriculum, and a school librarian, and reviewed and updated as necessary every 5 years. These policies must include a number of provisions outlined in the statute and ensure, among other things, that all library materials are evaluated and made accessible in accordance with state non-discrimination laws. So Shipman and Goodwin drafted one comprehensive model policy that encompasses the new statutory requirements in all 3 areas. And that would be policy 6144, library collection development and maintenance, library displays and programs, and library material review and reconsideration. So the main discussion, first it was about the definition of individuals with a vested interest. And so that definition actually comes straight from the state statute, which means any school staff member employed by the board, the parent or guardian of a student currently enrolled in a school operated by the board at the time of a request for reconsideration is filed, and any student currently enrolled in a school operated by the board at the time a request for reconsideration is filed. So the main discussion was this definition that came from the state cannot be messed with, but did we think it was inclusive enough? So there was great discussion about whether or not a Board of Ed member could bring to the for review a book that they thought was inappropriate or for whatever reason, or that they wanted removed from the collection. And so based on the definitions of an individual with a vested interest, a single Board of Ed member could not unless they were a parent or guardian of a current student. So there was discussion about inclusivity of that and whether or not we should allow a board member or whether we should only allow a board member to bring it forward if it's voted on by the entire board with a majority vote. And then we discussed, you know, how are the books and materials looked at to be included in the collections at the schools. We discussed the I forget the association now, the Library, Connecticut Association of Libraries or Librarians or something like that, consortium. There's lots of words there. And so we looked at that, and we also talked about whether or not a member of a community, of the Madison community who was a voter, whether or not they should have any input in it. And that was a great discussion as well. Some pros, some negatives. Some people think yes, some people think no. And so in the end, we were all at odds with each other and some of us liked it, some of us didn't like it, some of us said, well, maybe we could meet halfway. And then, I didn't like it, and then, and then blah, 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 and then we decided, well, let's bring it forward. This is something that must be adopted before the end of the year. And because policy won't meet again until April,
Yes.
we don't want to delay it, and so then we did have a question that we need to send to Shipman and Goodwin to say, can we sort of like finagle the wording of this at all, not from the direct quote of definitions from the statute, but whether or not can we even add the idea of saying, can a board member bring this forward? Like, is that legal based on the statute? So instead of waiting for the answer, we voted as a committee to bring it forward as is, as written by Shipman and Goodwin to the board for discussion, and during that time frame before the next meeting, hopefully Shipman and Goodwin will be able to weigh in as to whether or not any changes can be made, if they're legal or not, or what could be done. And then so it'll be a first read discussion. We can always discuss even with a first read, even though it's not an action item. And then we'll have our answer from Shipman and Goodwin, and then by the time the second read, if there are any amendments to it or changes, it can be done before the action item has taken action on. And that is my report.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. And
It's a good
finally,
time.
yeah, no, it's interesting. Finally, learn liaison, Galen, I didn't skip you this.
That's all right. I'm very much looking forward to going to it on Thursday.
So then enjoy your breakfast.
Yes.
All right, now we get into the interesting items, the action items. So action item 10, I need a motion to approve a donation from the Neck River PTO to Neck River Elementary School in the amount of $3,850 to fund Scholastic, World Book, and Pebble Go subscription.
Second.
Okay, it's 2018. And I'm sorry, who seconded? Was that Diane? Thank you. Any discussion? I think it's wonderful, great donation, awesome, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Vote carries 8-0. All right, action item 11, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the January 27th, 2026 Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Jessica and
Board of Education meeting.
Diane, I think my phone's fighting back through my watch because it wants to. All right, any discussions or recommended edits, amendments to the January 27th minutes?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries 8-0. Any discussion of future agenda items?
Cell phone policy.
What's that? Yeah, cell phone policy, yep.
I received a request from Mary Ann, I think it was Friday, to have a presentation on unified sports and unified opportunities, things that happen in Madison, so I will bring that to the executive committee. It just so happened that it coincided with the students' presentation today, but there were a lot of great things, so it'd be nice to highlight that for the report.
Great. Thank you. So we have those two things on that for future agenda items. And I need a motion to adjourn at 8:30.
So moved.
That was Maureen. Here. Any discussion, all in favor, aye, opposed, nay, any abstentions? Seeing none, we are now adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.